What is popping YouTube? Doing our mustache beat the breakout type player so you don't have to fight people on the waiver wire after week 11. These guys should already be rostered. Josh Dobbs, Kyler Murray, Trey McBride, Josh Downs, Rashid Rice, Jahan Dotson, JSN, Tank Dell. So if there's any reason that any of those guys are sitting out there on the waiver wire, make sure that you quickly add them. Our first mustache is going to be Ty Chandler. Ty Chandler was a very favorited waiver wire pickup this week. So if there's for any reason that Ty Chandler is still out there on waiver wire with Alexander Madison battling this concussion, I would do it. I know there's a chance that Alexander Madison plays this week, but based on what we've seen, I still want Ty Chandler as a handcuff, as someone that I'm stashing on my bench. 3% rostered in ESPN, 16% rostered in Sleeper. When we're looking at the Minnesota Vikings usage in week 10, I mean, Ty Chandler, goal line work, early down work, all plays, short yardage. Alexander Madison went down. It was the whole Ty Chandler show. So definitely go see if Ty Chandler is out there to stash. Second stash, for some reason, Keaton Mitchell, if he got dropped, like still stash Keaton Mitchell. 23% rostered in ESPN, 49% rostered in Sleeper. I know it didn't look good against the Bengals. Keaton Mitchell, his highlight was going to block for Zay Flowers, accelerating up the field. We still like the upside that Keaton Mitchell possesses, so I will be going to target some Keaton Mitchell as my next mustache if for some reason he's out there on waiver wire. Our next mustache is going to be Michael Wilson Jr. I think Michael Wilson Jr. makes this video each and every week, but yeah, I'm still rostering him. I think I'm the only guy who rostered Michael Wilson at this point. Kyler Murray, he showed last week he has the athleticism back and he has this offense about to be humming. 6.6% rostered in ESPN, 20% rostered in Sleeper. And the thing is, when we look at Michael Wilson, yes, last week only 6 fantasy points. The week before that only 9 fantasy points. But if we go back to week 3 where he had 10 fantasy points, week 4 where he had 20 fantasy points, the thing is he had significant targets where he had 7 targets. But the thing that makes me excited about Michael Wilson Jr., if we look at the last few weeks, 5 targets, 6 targets, 6 targets. So his target share is continuing to rise and become a lot more steady as the season goes on. He's clearly become the wide receiver 2 in this offense. And I know a lot of people are going to be scared about Zach Ertz coming back over the next few weeks. I don't care about Zach Ertz. Michael Wilson is still the wide receiver, technically 3 because Trey McBride's the 2, Hollywood's the 1. I think they're going to be behind enough. They're going to have to throw the ball enough that it's going to be worthy of you to go pick up Michael Wilson Jr. at this point to help you get some depth at the wide receiver position. Another mustache. I mean, go pick up some Rondale Moore. Rondale Moore, 42 snaps in week 10, 8 total targets. So he out-targeted Michael Wilson, out-targeted Hollywood Brown on only 42 snaps. Now, what this tells us about Rondale Moore, typically in the slot, typically open. When you're looking at all these other options in the Arizona Cardinals offense, I'm not saying that Rondale Moore is constantly going to provide fantasy football value, but he has had spurts where he has been a super viable fantasy football option. So Rondale Moore, 33% rostered in ESPN, 19% rostered in Sleeper. So I do like some Rondale Moore if you need it. Our next guy that you should be dashing is A.T. Perry for the Saints. Now, between Derek Carr, Jameis Winston chucked the ball up to a wide receiver. A.T. Perry, this is super deep stack. 2% owned in Sleeper, 0.1% owned in ESPN. But if we look, 56 snaps, 42 routes run, 4 total targets in week 10. Out-snapping Chris Olave, out-snapping Rashid Shaheed. I know Michael Thomas got hurt, so that's why A.T. Perry got in there. For me, I don't care who the quarterback is between Jameis Winston and Derek Carr. A.T. Perry is getting on the field with Michael Thomas getting dinged up last week. I still think A.T. Perry has shown that he has some sort of life, has some sort of upside as a wide receiver in the Saints offense. I'll give you another stash and he's going to be locked. I'm going to be honest. This guy's going to be locked right now. So you're going to have to consider adding him on the waiver wire, but it's going to be Tanner Hudson as a tight end. I know what you're saying, Caleb. Why are you telling me to add a Bengals tight end after Joe Burrow just got hurt and is out for the rest of the season? Well, Josh Brown is going to have to throw to someone. And as much as it might be Jamar Chase, I think it's going to have to be Tanner Hudson. These backup quarterbacks love their tight ends, and he's essentially 0% operator. He's like free. He's out there on waiver wire, especially if you need some tight end help. I think Tanner Hudson could be a sneaky deep stash even without Joe Burrow, because I think they're going to have to throw the ball a lot. They're going to be down. That means throwing to Jamar Chase and the tight ends. Next mustache is going to be Kyle Phillips. Kyle Phillips, 10 fantasy points in week 9, 9 fantasy points in week 10. And the thing is, his snap share has kind of started to increase from 26 to 30 to 35%. And the last 2 weeks has had 5 total targets. Now, if you don't know who Kyle Phillips is, Kyle Phillips was an absolute preseason darling for us last season when he was a rookie. Everyone was like, wow, Kyle Phillips is outproducing Treylon Burks. Well, he's still outproducing Treylon Burks, but Kyle Phillips in the slot with Will Levis. We definitely do like this offense. We like DeAndre Hopkins. We like Derrick Henry. We like Will Levis's big arm. I think Kyle Phillips continues to increase his snap share, continues to increase his target share, which I think is exciting for if you need a deeper stash on the wide receiver front. Next guy we should be stashing is going to be Zay Jones for the Jacksonville Jaguars. I mean, at this point, we need to be talking about Calvin Ridley as dead. Like, no upside. It pains me to say because I had so many Calvin Ridley shares. I told you guys to draft Calvin Ridley. That's on me. But I think we can make it out by going and getting Zay Jones. If we're looking at Wednesday Jones, 21% rostered in ESPN, 27% rostered in Sleeper, 16 fantasy points in week 1, 11 fantasy points in week 5 versus Buffalo. And I know he's been injured. I know he's been out. But with him coming back, I think we are excited to see what Zay Jones can do in this offense. Trevor Lawrence needs to get cooking. This whole offense really needs to get cooking again, but we do like some Zay Jones as a deep stash. Our next mustache player is going to be Pat Freiermuth, tight end for the Steelers. Pat Freiermuth, we need to know, coming off of IR, this tight end landscape is so bad. It is so bad. And we look at Pat Freiermuth, what he did the first 4 weeks of the season: 7 fantasy points, 1 fantasy point, 13 fantasy points, 3 fantasy points. Really right now in this tight end landscape, if you can get a guy that has any sort of breadth that's not in the top 5, because especially with Mark Andrews going down, Pat Freiermuth, I'm not saying that he can replace, but I think he can be better than Taysom Hill. I think he can be better than some of these options that are lower in on the totem pole, better than K. Dotton. So go stash Pat Freiermuth if you haven't already. He's only owned in 36% of ESPN leagues, 40% of sleeper leagues. Like me, some Pat Freiermuth. And then our final stash player is going to be Rico Gathers for the Dallas Cowboys. He was the person on the thumbnail. We absolutely love some Rico Gathers as the backup running back in this Dallas Cowboys offense. When we're looking, 3.8% owned in ESPN, 6% owned in sleeper leagues. And Rico Gathers had himself a day last week where he had 13 fantasy points. And yes, his snap percentage wasn't great. He's only been hovering around 20 to 35% snap percentage, but he did have 13 touches, 78 yards, and 1 total touchdown. We've seen a backup running back in this Dallas Cowboys offense have a ton of success on a week-by-week basis because Tony Pollard, Zeke Elliott the last few years. I think Rico Gathers, as the season continues, as the Dallas Cowboys offense continues to thrive, I think Rico Gathers could definitely be a great stash for you, especially if you have Tony Pollard as a handcuff. But even so, I think Rico Gathers has some upside all by himself. So appreciate you guys tuning in. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.